Hello there. My name is Sebastian Beaumont from the Faith and Spirituality team, and this is week 2 of 6 weeks of meditation. And week 1 can be found by scrolling down on the Together Apart Facebook page, but you don't need to do that. This is a standalone meditation. Today, we're going to be looking at being present. We're also going to be looking at thought and how that can interrupt being present. So you might say that thought is an excellent tool, but a bad master. So we'll be unpacking that a little bit. But first, I want to have a 3-minute arrival sit. I want to just sit comfortably in alert posture for 3 minutes whilst we arrive in whatever space we find ourselves. So sitting comfortably and in an alert posture, back straight, not leaning against the back of a chair if possible, but comfortable and alert. And we'll have 3 minutes of arrival. So just allowing yourself to close your eyes and be present with whatever is happening for you at the moment. That could be noticing your state of mind, noticing sounds, noticing feelings in the body, or just being aware and open and allowing everything to be exactly as it is. Thought can be thinking, the body could be comfortable or uncomfortable. We're not really bothered with what's happening, we're just being open and we're noticing. Noticing too the rhythm of breathing, that gentle pattern of expansion and contraction of the chest. And again, allowing that to be exactly as it is. Thought is okay too, not following thought, just allowing it to arise and pass. Just coming gently back into whatever space you find yourself in. And I'm going to chat to you a little bit about thought before we get on and do a formal meditation. So in meditation, thought will arise, and that's fine. thinking is essential. It's not a problem. It's what we do, and we can't live our lives effectively if we don't have thought. As I said earlier, it's an excellent tool. We need to be able to plan, to be able to effectively conduct our lives. So the idea in meditation is to notice when we're caught up in thought. We need to know when thoughts are unhelpful, and we need to know when they're repetitive and going nowhere. So during meditation, the content of thought is irrelevant. And this is contrary to the way in which our therapeutic orientated society looks at thought. So if something comes up, something psychological comes up while you're meditating, the therapeutic way of working with that is that you would have a look, you would analyze, you would try to unravel and sort out whatever it is that's coming up. But in meditation, the purpose in meditation is just simply to notice that we're thinking and to come back to whatever it is we're doing in meditation. So in the meditation today, we'll be concentrating on the breath. And so you come back to the breath. We don't need to examine it, and the reason why we don't need to examine what the content of thought is because we're just simply noticing when we're thinking and when we're thinking and when we're caught up in thinking. We also notice body experience and other experiences as well. But we come back to the breath without bothering with the content of what we've been thinking. And this is the mind training of meditation. The mind training of meditation, just to be able to notice and be aware of what's happening so that we don't get caught up in it to our detriment. Hence the saying, thought is an excellent tool, but a bad master. So in meditation, what we're doing is we are creating a new relationship with thought. And being present in immediate experience is a very helpful way of disengaging with cyclic and unhelpful thinking. So what we do is we learn to become present enough of the time for that to be helpful in these kinds of processes. Okay. So it's clear when, I think in our own experience, but I think also that from scientific experiments, it's clear that about 90% of thought is repetitive, superficial, unnecessary, or unhelpful. Could be a lot more than 90%, or if we're very focused on a task, it can be considerably less. But nevertheless, we have a lot of time that we spend thinking unnecessarily and to our detriment, especially in our culture, and probably especially now during this epidemic. We're literally addicted to unnecessary patterns of thinking. Sometimes it's quite useful to think of thinking as being like a bus or buses. So if I want to go to work and I turn up at Churchill Square and get on the first bus that comes past, who knows where I'm going to end up? I certainly am unlikely to end up at work. So thought chains are like this. So I start thinking and off I go. I don't know where I'm going to end up, and it's all a bit arbitrary. So what I need to do is I need to know which bus to get on and when to get off it. I need to notice what I'm doing and just be aware of that. So, and the reason I like this metaphor of buses is because a bus, there can be as many buses as you like. Churchill Square has loads and loads of buses going through it, and as long as you don't get on arbitrary and unnecessary buses, they're not going to be a problem. So the same with thought. You have as much thought as you like, so long as you don't get caught up in it, it doesn't matter. It can be there. We can notice thought arising and passing in meditation and just simply not be bothered by it. And so that's one of the reasons why the content of thought is something that we don't pay attention to in meditation. We're just noticing thoughts coming and going and allowing them to do that. So, as I said a few moments ago, being present in direct experience is incredibly helpful when it comes to managing what we pay attention to and so on. So, um, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of an exercise now just to get us in the mood for being present. So what I want you to do is I don't want you to actually do this. I just want you to consider what it's like to wiggle your toes. Don't wiggle your toes, but just imagine what it's like to wiggle your toes and just see if you can imagine that just for a few moments, wiggling your toes without wiggling them. Okay, and now I'd like you to wiggle your toes. Wiggle the toes on both feet and see what that feels like. Okay, so noticing the wiggling of the toes and noticing the thinking or the memory of wiggling of the toes, perhaps you can see that direct experience and thinking about direct experience are very different. So when I thought about wiggling my toes, I had a sense of it, but it wasn't actually similar in some ways to the direct experience of doing it. You could also do something like imagine eating a strawberry and then eating a strawberry. The eating of the strawberry is a familiar experience, but when we imagine it, it is not the same as direct experience. So why am I telling you this? Why are we considering this? Well, the reason for it is that thinking about meditation and thinking about mindfulness are useful in certain ways, but they're not the same as actually doing a meditation practice. And I think I've come across quite a lot of people in my time where they understand the principles of meditation, and so on some level think that meditation itself is unnecessary because the lessons of meditation have been learned. But actually, meditation itself is an incredibly valuable practice, and it's the doing of it and getting a regular practice of doing it that is important. So what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to do a mindfulness of breathing in 4 stages. Last week we did 2 stages. We're going to do the full 4 stages this week. And I'd just like to say that it's worth just considering this before we start. So what we need to do with meditation is we need to allow it to be exactly as it is. We don't know what's going to happen in a meditation, and if we come into it with any kind of expectation or hope that it's going to be a particular way, that can be very problematic, particularly if we had a good meditation the last time we meditated and we want to repeat that. The terms like good and bad in meditation are quite unhelpful as concepts because we place a limit on what we experience by having expectations, and these are unhelpful. So allowing ourselves to be open and receptive to whatever arises is a very fertile place to be in meditation. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the 4-stage mindfulness of breathing. I'll lead us through this, and if you've never done it before, that's absolutely fine. Let's have a go at it now. So getting into posture, and that means sitting on a chair if you can, with your feet apart, your back straight, your head up, alert, not leaning against the back of the chair because that can make us quite sleepy or sludgy in our experience. So we're going to sit for about 20 minutes, something like that, maybe a little bit more, and allowing everything to be exactly as it is. So not hurrying into a meditation. What we need to do is we need to gather ourselves and prepare ourselves to meditate. We need to acknowledge our mental state. So just being clear about how you're feeling today. So that could be calm, could be anxious, could be happy, could be sad, it could be absolutely anything. Doesn't matter what the starting point is, because we all have to start somewhere. And as I said earlier, a meditation is a noticing, so we're just noticing what is going on. So if you're used to meditating with your eyes open, that's fine, but most people meditate with their eyes closed, and I would recommend that if you haven't meditated before or don't meditate regularly. So closing your eyes and just having a sense of the body as a whole, the weight of ourselves sitting on chairs or wherever we're sitting, any contact with the floor or the chair. And then bringing attention to the breathing, bringing attention to the rhythm of the breathing. And just being with that for a few moments. As we start the 4 stages of the mindfulness of breathing. We're carrying on with the paying attention to the rhythm of the breathing. And now in stage 1, we introduce a counting of the breath. So we breathe in, we breathe out. At the very end of the out breath, just as it's coming to an end, we count 1, breathe in, breathe out, 2, breathe in, breathe out, 3, and we go on up until 10, and then back again and start at 1 through to 10 again, and then we repeat this cycle for the rest of this part of the meditation. The counting keeps us anchored, helps us to notice when we're drifting off into thought, and remembering that thought is fine. Just as soon as you notice you're thinking, congratulate yourself and bring yourself back to the breath and start counting again at 1. So remembering that we're not trying to push away any experience, we're allowing things to be as they are. But if we get caught up in anything, there's coming back, starting again with the count at 1. moving into stage 2 of the mindfulness of breathing. What we're doing in this stage is we're continuing to count the breath. We're counting the breath after the end of the out breath. So with the beginning of the in breath, we count 1. So we breathe in, we breathe out, the breath closes down, comes to a still point for a moment. And with the in breath, as the in breath opens up, we count 1. Breathe in, breathe out. As we're breathing in, we count 2. As with the first stage, up to 10 and then back again to 1. In the first stage, we were counting with the closing down of the breath. In this stage, we're counting with the opening up of the breath. Remembering that thoughts are like buses, have as many of them as you like, but we're not interested in the content of thought, just allowing thought to rise and pass. When we're caught up, coming back to the counting and starting again at 1. And now moving on into the third stage of the mindfulness of breathing. what we do is we just drop the counting and pay attention for the next few minutes to the rhythm of the breathing, just noticing all aspects of the breathing in your experience. So there's the place in the body where it enters and leaves. So that could be the nose, could be the mouth. There's sensations maybe in the throat, in the lungs, the sense of the contraction and expansion of the diaphragm, the movement of clothing, all sorts of sensations that are gradually changing all the time. So just allowing attention to rest wherever it naturally rests, and allowing the breath to be just as it is, noticing the fullness or the richness of the experience of the breath. And so now moving on to the fourth and final stage of the mindfulness of breathing. So what we're doing here is we're gradually taking our attention to the place in the body where we experience the breath as it first enters or leaves the body. So that may be in the nose or in the mouth. Sometimes it might be elsewhere, like in the throat. But nevertheless, at a particular point, where you're experiencing the breath and can experience it just in that place as it arises and passes, as it comes and goes. Just paying attention to that place, paying attention to the changing sensations. If you find a lot of thought arising, it's fine to start counting the breath again to root yourself in the practice. Thought is fine, just don't follow thought. When you notice thought, if you're caught up in it, come back to the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves the body. Just in the last few seconds of this meditation, dropping any sense of paying attention to the breath and just opening up to all experience of yourself, of the room, of any extraneous noise, and just allowing that to be exactly as it is for a few seconds without paying attention to anything in particular. And with no hurry, coming out of this meditation. So, as I've said, no hurry coming out of meditation, just allowing yourself to come back into the room gently, open your eyes and relax. So what we're trying to do in meditation is we're trying to notice and we're trying to accept what's going on. So wanting and not wanting an experience is what makes an experience problematic. So acceptance, particularly acceptance of anything that is happening right now, is very beneficial. You might say, saying, I'm happy and that's fine is an easy thing to say. To say, I'm not happy and that's fine is less easy, but maybe more important to be able to do. I would say that from a Buddhist point of view, trying to change an unsatisfactory experience into something else, something other than unsatisfactory, that unsatisfactoriness is perpetuated. Accepting an unsatisfactory situation just as it is, it ceases to be unsatisfactory. So on a deep level, presence and noticing are synonymous. Noticing doesn't judge anything, it doesn't wish it was different, it just notices. So being present in your experience doesn't want to push anything away, and acceptance is a characteristic of present experience. And noticing of all of this is a profoundly positive thing to do. I hope you'll agree with me on that one. If you've got any questions or any comments, do feel free to get in touch with me. My details are on the Faith and Spirituality homepage, so you can go there and find me and ask any questions you may have. So I hope that was a useful session, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Okay, bye for now.